Your stomach is essentially a chemical reactor filled with highly concentrated acid, far stronger than what would ever be needed to digest a plate of salad or a bowl of cereal. In fact, the acid level inside the human stomach is shockingly intense, even surpassing many of today's top carnivores. This was not a mistake of evolution, but a biological weapon sharpened over millions of years to protect our ancestors from deadly bacteria hiding inside massive slabs of wild animal meat. This number stands as undeniable evidence, a biological fingerprint, exposing a truth we've forgotten. For most of our history, humans were not gentle omnivores casually gathering berries, but the most ruthless apex predators on the planet. This revelation is shaking the very foundation of what we once believed about our ancestors' diet. For decades, we were told that prehistoric humans survived through a flexible mix of gathering plants and occasionally hunting small animals. But researchers from Tel Aviv University recently made a shocking claim in the yearbook of the American Anthropological Association. For nearly 2 million years, the human diet was almost 100% meat. We maintained this status as apex predators until around 85,000 years ago, a point surprisingly recent in the timeline of human evolution, raising a major question about whether humans were ever truly designed to be vegetarian. The reason this misunderstanding lasted so long is because earlier scientists often looked at 20th century hunter-gatherer tribes to make assumptions about the distant past. However, that was a logical mistake. 2 million years ago, the world was not made up of sparse forests but of a massive feast filled with gigantic animals. Creatures as large as, or even larger than, modern elephants roamed the planet, providing an enormous source of energy that plants could never match. Why spend hours digging up roots or gathering berries when a single elephant could feed an entire community for weeks? The evidence is not only found in piles of fossilized animal bones, but also deeply embedded within your own cells. Take a look at the way fat is stored in the human body. In omnivorous animals, fat is usually stored in a small number of large fat cells. But humans possess countless tiny fat cells, a biological trait commonly associated with specialized meat eaters. Geneticists have even discovered that while our closest relatives, chimpanzees, developed expanded genes to process sugar-heavy diets from fruit, those same gene regions were shut down in humans. Instead, our bodies opened entirely new metabolic pathways designed to prioritize diets rich in fat and dense protein. This evolution turned us into fat-hunting machines. The oldest stone tools ever discovered were not mortars or grinding tools for plants. They were razor-sharp blades used to butcher meat and crack open bones for marrow. It was only much later in the evolutionary timeline, when specialized tools for processing plants began to appear, that we started seeing a shift in the human diet. This strongly suggests that vegetables and seeds were merely backup options, not the primary food source for humans throughout the Pleistocene. So what forced these kings of the food chain to step down and become gatherers and farmers? It was not a voluntary choice, but a survival crisis. Around 85,000 years ago, the sudden decline of large animals pushed our ancestors into a desperate situation. The supply of fatty, high-energy meat began to disappear, forcing humans to diversify their diet in order to survive. We started eating more plants, domesticating crops, and developing agriculture not because it was the most natural diet, but because it became the only way to avoid starvation once the ancient elephants were gone. This adaptation became one of the main driving forces behind humanity's greatest evolutionary changes, exactly as Charles Darwin once predicted. The shift from apex predator to omnivore reshaped our biology, our social structures, and even the way we think. We carry the brain of a predator, yet we live in a world built by farmers. Understanding this 2-million-year legacy of meat consumption does more than explain today's debates about nutrition. It reminds us of the sheer power and brutality of natural selection. Every one of us alive today is descended from beings who stood at the top of the ecosystem through relentless determination and extraordinary adaptability. People who used animal blood and fat to nourish the very seeds of human civilization.